Embers in the void. The archivists of the Galactic Concordat had long classified the Sol system as a dead zone, a cosmic graveyard where an ambitious species had immolated itself in nuclear fire. For 300 cycles, the system had been quarantined, marked only by warning beacons and studied from afar by xenohistorians who specialized in extinct civilizations. Commander Thera Vex of the Concordat scientific vessel Inquirer stared at the massive structure that hung against the backdrop of stars near the orbit of what the extinct Terrans had called Neptune. It should not exist, not in this state at least. "Magnify Sector 4, she ordered, her 4 eyes narrowing as the view screen responded. "What am I looking at, science officer?" Coril, her lanky science officer, manipulated the holographic controls with his 3-fingered hands. "It appears to be a human orbital station, Commander. Classification: Deep Space Monitoring Platform. Age estimate: approximately 280 local years." "And why?" Thera asked, mandibles clicking in agitation. "Is it still operational?" For indeed, that was the mystery. The station's external lights pulsed in regular patterns. Communication dishes rotated slowly, searching the void. Most importantly, and most impossibly, the massive fusion engines at its rear still burned, a faint blue glow that should have extinguished centuries ago. "Unknown, Commander," Coril replied. "According to all historical records, the Terran civilization destroyed itself in what they called the Solar War. No functioning technology should remain, particularly nothing requiring active maintenance." Thera rose from her command chair, stalking closer to the view screen. The Terrans had fascinated her since her academy days. A bipedal species, barely 1,000 years into their technological development, who had managed to colonize their entire system before turning their weapons upon each other in a war of such ferocity that it had sterilized their homeworld and shattered their colonies. Or so the records claimed. "Prepare a scout vessel," she ordered. "I will lead the expedition myself." Her second-in-command, Vril, chittered in alarm. "Commander, the quarantine protocols apply to preventing contamination, not scientific inquiry," she finished. "If there is Terran technology still functioning after all this time, the Concordat will want to know why and how." 2 hours later, Thera's scout ship approached the ancient station. Up close, it was even more remarkable. A massive cylinder nearly a kilometer long, with radiating spars and docking arrays. Some sections showed damage, twisted metal, and scorch marks that spoke of ancient battles, but the structure itself remained intact. "Radiation levels normal," reported Ensign Kez from the sensor station. "Atmosphere detected within the structure." "Composition: Commander, the atmosphere is breathable." Thera's heart rhythm increased. "You're saying the life support systems are still functioning after 3 centuries?" "Affirmative. And there's more. I'm detecting power signatures throughout the structure. Low-level electromagnetic emissions consistent with computational systems." "Automated systems," Coril suggested. "Self-repair protocols that outlived their creators." Thera wasn't convinced. Something about this felt wrong, or perhaps too right. The Terrans had been clever, yes, but creating systems that could maintain themselves for centuries without input, that went beyond clever into the realm of impossible. They docked at an external airlock that cycled open at their approach, another impossibility. Inside, emergency lighting cast long shadows through corridors designed for beings slightly taller and broader than the Concordat team. The air smelled stale but breathable, with faint traces of artificial components that Thera's suit identified as cleaning agents. "Commander," called Kez, who had wandered ahead. "You need to see this." Thera joined him at what appeared to be a control center, a circular room filled with ancient interfaces and screens. Most were dark, but one large central monitor flickered with light, displaying a repeating message in the Terran language known as English. "Station K9, Automated Alert. Communication 202 Active. Avoiting avuti and today. It's trying to communicate, Coril whispered, almost reverently. A ghost in the machine, still following its programming. Thera approached the console. Can we respond? Coril hesitated. I've studied Terran linguistic patterns and basic interface protocols. I might be able to. A new message flashed across the screen, interrupting him. Unknown entities, DETCTE. Tehesian defensive systems. Activated. Identify or face. COUMENTRMEAS. It detected us, Thera said, maintaining her calm despite the threat. Coril, tell it we're peaceful researchers. Coril's fingers danced across the unfamiliar interface. After several tense moments, the screen changed again. Concordate identification, ACCPTE. Dipilometic EPR of 2 OCOLs, ENJGGT. Establishing secure channel with command. The screen went blank, then filled with static. When it cleared, Thera found herself staring at something impossible, a Terran face, male by their dimorphic standards, with dark skin and eyes that reflected the artificial light with an intelligence that no automated system could simulate. This is Captain Elias Chen of the Neptune Defense Perimeter, the Terran said in accented but clear galactic standard. You are the first visitors we've had in a very long time. Welcome to what's left of humanity. Silence fell across the control room as the Concordat team struggled to comprehend what they were seeing. The Terrans weren't extinct. They had survived, hidden at the edges of their own system, maintaining their ancient outposts and watching the stars. How many of you are there? Thera finally asked. The Terran, Chen, smiled grimly. More than you'd think. Less than there should be. The solar war nearly finished us. It's true. Earth is still uninhabitable. Mars is a wasteland. But we survived in the places no one thought to look. The outer moons, the asteroid clusters, the deep space platforms like this one. The historical records indicate total civilizational collapse, Cordell said, his scientific curiosity overcoming his shock. How did you maintain your technology? The same way we survived. Adaptability. Chen's image shifted as he moved, revealing a cramped command center behind him, where other humans worked at stations similar to those on the abandoned platform. When the war destroyed our centralized governments and industrial complexes, we had to become self-sufficient. Each outpost, each colony ship, each mining platform had to survive on its own. We developed closed-loop systems, self-replicating technologies, fusion engines that could run for centuries on minimal fuel. Thera's mind raced with the implications. And you've been watching us, watching the galaxy, all this time. Chen nodded. We maintain a network of observation posts throughout the system. This station detected your ship as soon as it crossed the heliopause. Others are tracking your main vessel in Neptune's orbit. Why reveal yourselves now? Thera asked, suspicion mixing with her scientific curiosity. You could have remained hidden. Chen's expression grew solemn. Because it's time. We've rebuilt enough, learned enough. The mistakes that led to the solar war, we've had centuries to understand them, to develop safeguards against repeating them. And we've been watching the Concordat. You're not perfect, but you're better than most. Better how? Vril asked from behind Thera. You study before you conquer. You preserve before you transform. You remember the past. Chen leaned closer to the screen. Which is why I'm authorized to extend an invitation. The remaining governments of humanity would like to establish formal diplomatic relations with the Galactic Concordat. Thera felt the weight of history settling on her shoulders. This was beyond a scientific discovery. It was first contact with a species thought extinct, a civilization that had survived its own apocalypse and emerged transformed. I accept this invitation, she said formally, on behalf of the Concordat. But understand, this changes everything we thought we knew about your species. Chen's smile returned, wider this time. Commander Vex, you have no idea how much is about to change. For all of us. He glanced at someone off-screen, then refocused on the Concordat team. Prepare your vessel. We're sending coordinates for Neptune Outpost Alpha. It's time you saw what humanity has been building while the galaxy thought we were dead. As the transmission ended, Thera looked around at her stunned crew. Well, she said, mandibles clicking in what her species recognized as wry amusement, it seems the dead have something to say after all. The embers of humanity hadn't just survived. They had been quietly burning all along, waiting for the right moment to flare back into the cosmic darkness. The unconquered light. Neptune Outpost Alpha was not what Thera expected. From the outside, it resembled the ancient monitoring station, a utilitarian structure of metal and composite materials. Inside, it was a revelation. The Concordat delegation walked through corridors illuminated by soft light that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. The air was fresh and carried subtle scents that Thera's xenobiology training identified as plant matter and food preparation. Most striking was the constant movement. Humans of various ages and appearances moved purposefully through the station, some nodding at the alien visitors, others watching with undisguised curiosity. Our population here is just under 10,000, Captain Chen explained as he led them toward the central hub. Alpha was one of the emergency evacuation points during the final days of the Solar War. What began as a temporary refuge became permanent as the inner system became uninhabitable. You've adapted remarkably well to deep space living, Coril observed, his scientific mind cataloging everything he saw. Your physiology evolved for planetary conditions. Chen smiled. Humans are surprisingly adaptable, and necessity drove innovation. The early years were harsh: radiation sickness, bone density loss, psychological trauma from confinement. But each generation grew stronger in space, more attuned to this environment. They passed through a security checkpoint where human guards stood alongside automated systems. Thera noted the weapons. Elegant, compact designs that looked nothing like the crude projectile weapons historically associated with Terrans. Directed energy, she asked, gesturing to the guard's sidearms. Plasma containment tech, Chen confirmed. Developed about 70 years ago. Efficient, low maintenance, and effective in vacuum. The central hub of Alpha opened before them, a vast cylindrical space stretching hundreds of meters in both directions. Along its walls, residential modules were stacked in concentric rings around a central open area where vegetation grew in carefully maintained gardens. Above, massive light arrays mimicked the spectral quality of Sol as seen from Neptune's orbit. But what drew Thera's attention was the massive holographic display dominating the center of the hub. It showed the entire Sol system in exquisite detail, from the scared surface of Mercury to the distant Oort cloud. Small points of light indicated human outposts, connected by lines representing communication and transit routes. There were hundreds of them. Our network, Chen said with evident pride. 47 major habitats like Alpha, over 300 smaller outposts, and approximately 2,000 automated monitoring stations. Total population, just over 6 million humans. Vril chittered in disbelief. 6 million. From a species that once numbered in the billions. We were nearly extinct, said a new voice. A Concordat team turned to find an elderly human female approaching, aided by what appeared to be an exoskeletal support system integrated into her clothing. I remember the final evacuations. I was just a child then. Chen bowed slightly. Director Nakamura, may I present Commander Thera Vex and her team from the Galactic Concordat. The elderly human studied them with sharp eyes that belied her physical frailty. Welcome to what remains of humanity, Commander. I am Akiko Nakamura, Director of the Outer System Coalition. I never expected to meet aliens in my lifetime. Nor did we expect to find living Terrans, Thera replied, performing the formal greeting gesture of her species. Your survival challenges everything we thought we knew about your civilization's fate. Nakamura gestured toward a conference area adjacent to the central hub. Then we have much to discuss. Please, join me. Once seated around a circular table that accommodated both human and concordat physiologies, Nakamura activated a display embedded in its surface. The Solar War, she began without preamble, lasted 11 years and destroyed 5 billion lives. Earth's surface was rendered uninhabitable through nuclear, biological, and nanological weapons. Mars suffered similar devastation. The inner colonies on Venus and Mercury were targeted for their industrial capacity. What the history books in your concordat cannot know is that some of us anticipated the collapse. The table displayed historical footage, massive ships departing the inner planets, heading for the outer system. Desperate faces pressed against viewports. Warning sirens and emergency broadcasts played in the background. Operation Diaspora, Nakamura continued. A last-ditch effort by scientists, engineers, and forward-thinking leaders from both sides of the conflict. While the powers fought over Earth and Mars, we scattered humanity's seeds as widely as possible throughout the system, hoping some would take root. And they did, Chen added. The Neptune colonies, the Jovian moons, the Trojan asteroids, places considered too remote or resource-poor to be strategic targets. Coril leaned forward, fascinated. But how did you maintain technological civilization with such limited resources? The infrastructure requirements alone. Nakamura smiled for the first time. That, Officer Coril, is where humanity's greatest strength revealed itself. When we could no longer rely on centralized manufacturing or global supply chains, we were forced to innovate at the most fundamental levels. She gestured, and the display changed to show technical schematics unfamiliar to the Concordat team. Molecular fabrication, self-replicating systems, closed ecological loops that could sustain themselves indefinitely. Technologies that were theoretical before the war became essential after it. Necessity catalyzed a technological revolution, Chen explained. The same principles that allow our stations to function for centuries with minimal maintenance permitted our society to rebuild from almost nothing. Thera's mind raced with the implications. These technologies, they're far beyond what your historical development curve should have produced. Desperation is a powerful accelerant for innovation, Nakamura said. When the choice is evolve or die, evolution happens quickly. Which brings us to why we've decided to reveal ourselves now. The display changed again, showing regions of space well beyond the Sol system. Thera recognized the territorial boundaries of several major galactic powers, including the Concordat. We've been watching, Nakamura said simply. For nearly 3 centuries, we've observed your civilizations, your wars, your treaties, your technological development. Our long-range probes have mapped significant portions of nearby space without being detected. Impossible, Vril interjected. The Concordat has the most advanced sensor networks in known space. We would have detected your probes. Chen and Nakamura exchanged glances. Your sensors detect what they're designed to detect, Chen said carefully. Our probe technology evolved along different lines. Nakamura tapped the table, and a new schematic appeared, a device unlike anything Thera had seen before. Quantum entanglement observational arrays, she explained. They don't transmit signals that can be detected. They exist partially in folded spacetime, observing without interacting. The implication sent a chill through Thera's exoskeleton. If the humans possessed this level of technology, what else had they developed in their isolated evolution? Why reveal yourselves now? She asked again, more urgently this time. What changed? Nakamura's expression grew grave. We detected something at the edge of explored space, something that concerns us greatly. The display shifted to show astronomical data, radiation patterns, gravitational anomalies, and what appeared to be the fringes of a massive structure at the edge of detection range. We call them the harvesters, Chen said quietly. They appear every few thousand years, moving through star systems and collecting resources, technology, entire biospheres. They've been dormant for approximately 3,000 years, but our long-range data suggests they're awakening. We've never detected such entities, Korill said. You wouldn't have, Nakamura replied. They operate beyond the conventional detection methods used by the Concordat. Our quantum arrays only found them by accident, when one of our deep space probes was investigating a gravitational anomaly. Thera felt the weight of command pressing down on her. You're suggesting a threat to all civilized space. Why come to us? Why not approach the Galactic Council directly? Because we needed to know if you could be trusted, Chen said simply. Humanity nearly destroyed itself once. We won't be responsible for bringing a new threat to unprepared worlds. The Concordat has the most extensive scientific infrastructure and the most balanced approach to new species and technologies. And frankly, Nakamura added with surprising candor, your ship was the first to breach our outer security perimeter in 3 centuries. We took it as a sign. The elderly director rose with the assistance of her exoskeleton. Commander Vex, humanity wishes to rejoin the galactic community, not as a footnote in history books about extinct civilizations, but as partners in what may be coming. We offer our technologies, our unique perspective as survivors, and our assistance in preparing for the harvesters. Thera stood as well, her decision already made. Director Nakamura, Captain Chen, on behalf of the Galactic Concordat, I accept your offer of alliance and will convey your warnings to my superiors. The rediscovery of humanity will be recorded as one of the most significant events in recent galactic history. Chen smiled. We'd prefer to think of it not as a rediscovery, Commander, but as a return. Humanity never truly left. Our engines kept burning, waiting for the right moment to reignite our place among the stars. As the meeting concluded and formal protocols were established for communication between the human coalition and the Concordat, Thera found herself at one of Alpha's observation ports, staring out at the distant sun that had nearly witnessed the extinction of this remarkable species. Korill joined her, his scientific instruments still actively scanning everything around them. They've evolved beyond our models, Commander. In isolation, they've developed along technological paths we never considered. Not just technological paths, Thera mused, philosophical ones as well. They faced extinction and chose to rebuild rather than seek vengeance. They developed in secret rather than risking conflict before they were ready. Do you believe their warnings about these harvesters? Korill asked. Thera watched as a small human vessel departed Alpha, its fusion engines flaring bright against the darkness, a potent symbol of a species that refused to be extinguished. I believe, she said finally, that a species who survived their own apocalypse deserves to be heard, especially when they warn of another. In the void between planets, humanity's engines still burned, not just with fusion fire, but with the inextinguishable light of adaptation, innovation, and survival against impossible odds. The galaxy had thought them dead. Instead, they had been reforging themselves into something new, a species tempered by catastrophe and strengthened by isolation, ready to emerge from the shadows of their past and face whatever the universe might bring. They called themselves Sol Invictus now, the unconquered sun, and as Thera's ship departed the Neptune outpost with news that would shake the foundations of the Concordat, she understood the truth of that name. Humanity had faced the darkness of its own making and emerged, not unchanged, but undefeated. The light of Sol still burned in them, and now that light would shine across the galaxy once more.